Before we begin today's podcast, we obviously want to take a moment to send our condolences to the family of Jimmy Hayes, who passed away yesterday. He's survived by his wife and two very young sons, and Jimmy, of course, is the older brother of Kevin Hayes. And while we personally don't pretend to know Jimmy well, through conversations with Kevin about his hockey journey and, more importantly, just his life in general, it's incredibly evident what an impact his brother Jimmy had on his life. And through the outpouring of support since yesterday, it's clear that the impact stretches to many corners of the hockey community. Again, our condolences to the entire Hayes family at this incredibly difficult time.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Taryn Hatcher and the dynamic Joe Fordyce. We are going to continue our lineup series. We've already predicted the top 6 forwards, the bottom 6 forwards for the Flyers. You can check out those previous episodes. In today's episode, we are going to start looking at the defensive pairs. We will do all 3, and we will predict a sleeper for each one. So let's get right into it. Taryn Hatcher, I will start with you. Who is your top pair defense for the Flyers? And give us a sleeper. I have a feeling who you're going to pick. I think we're all going to have the same, but go ahead.
I think obviously most people's top D pair this year is, and it should be, Ryan Ellis and Ivan Provorov. I don't think there's anywhere else Proby would go, first of all, and second of all, they brought in Ellis to be there, really. I don't know that it's been acknowledged that that's like set in stone, but that's really why he's here. And I think it'll be interesting to see. Ivan obviously plays so much better when there's another bona fide top pair kind of guy next to him. It's pretty obvious with Matt Niskanen as well. So it'll be fun to see Ivan be able to get back to, I think, just focusing on his game, because where he struggles is when he tries to take on too much because he physically can handle a lot. So hopefully that will alleviate some of the pressure on Provorov. I think my sleeper, I really don't want there to be a sleeper. I want this to be set. I want the Flyers D pairs to be set all the way down. That works so much better for them. And I've talked to Mike Gill about it, and he's just like, that's the ideal situation. So ideally there would be no sleeper. I don't know, maybe Sanheim. Maybe Sanheim takes a massive jump or something. That would be great. The Flyers, I think, would love to see him be like a competitive for top D pair type of guy. But ideally, I don't even really want a sleeper. I just want it to be those two.
I think the top pair is the toughest to pick a sleeper. We're almost forcing that a little bit because in a perfect world, the Flyers want Ryan Ellis, Ivan Provorov, Provorov on the left, Ellis on the right, and they want that to be set in stone. So that's a tough one. Good pick, Taryn. Joe Fordyce, what are you thinking? Anything different than Taryn? I know it's difficult, but get into your first pair.
Yeah, so just in general, I agree with you that it's the toughest to pick a sleeper, but to me, the way the Flyers' defensive lineup looks, I feel like all this should be set in stone. I mean, I feel like this is very clear cut from the top to bottom. Of course, I'm going to go with Ellis and Provorov as the top pair. I'm going to name a sleeper as Rasmus Ristolainen, because if he comes to Philadelphia and realizes the potential that made him a former first-round pick, and the idea that maybe, we've talked about it a lot, that maybe he wasn't able to have his full sort of like arsenal or repertoire on display because it was Buffalo. And, they're generally have been a bottom-dwelling team, and definitely during his career. So I would view him as a sleeper. And the other thing I will say, too, when you look at the power play, I think you could potentially split up Ellis and Provorov and deepen that power play a little bit. But I'm going to save my power play conversation for a little later down the lineup, because I have a definite idea of what I'd like to see from the power play. But again, Ellis and Provorov is the obvious top pair. And the sleeper, like you said, we're kind of forcing it, but I'm going to say Ristolainen, because I think we I think we've already seen the best and worst of Travis Sanheim. And I don't know that the best makes him a top pair defenseman. I think he's ideally that second, a second pair defenseman. So, and I don't think either Braun or Yandel could crack the top on even strength defense pairs. I don't think either of them could top the crack the top pair. So I'm going to say Ristolainen for my sleeper.
I like that, Joe. Yeah, I'm going no different than you and Taryn. I think it has to be Ryan Ellis and Ivan Provorov. Ryan Ellis was brought in to be the Matt Niskanen. Let's be point blank there. He was brought in to fill that huge void that the Flyers had all of last season. The big void that really derailed their year in many ways. And he needs to be the top pair guy that gets the best out of Ivan Provorov and the guy that kind of settles things down up top for the Flyers on their defensive pairs. He plays power play. He kills penalties. He plays big minutes. I think the big question will be, can he stay healthy? And can he be the top pair guy, maybe even the number one guy for the Flyers? I know Ivan Provorov is kind of their de facto number one guy, but Matt Niskanen, I think his responsibilities, he was just as important as Ivan Provorov in 2019-20. I think you can argue. So Ryan Ellis played with some good defensemen last season. He played with Roman Josi. He played with Matthias Ekholm. So I think the Flyers really want him to take even a step up and say, be our guy, lead our way. So he is my guy next to Ivan Provorov. And my sleeper would also be Rasmus Ristolainen, simply because he's played big minutes in Buffalo. He's played top pair minutes. Actually, over the last 5 seasons, he has actually played more minutes per game than Ivan Provorov. I think that tells you how much instability they had in Buffalo. But he has played big minutes before. Maybe he blows them away, climbs up next to Ivan Provorov, and maybe the Flyers look for a little more balance. Maybe they want to get Ryan Ellis with Sanheim to maybe give him a little bit more experience, a little more a guy with a little more, maybe soothing presence or calming presence next to Sanheim. So maybe that
soothing.
Maybe he can be the soothing guy next to Travis Sanheim.
Just whispers sweet nothings in his ears in between the plays. You got this, bud. I believe in you. You can do this.
Well, Jordan, I would say Ristolainen, another big reason that he could be a sleeper for the top pair is physicality. If the Flyers are trying to send a message, I mean, I'm not saying Provorov and Ellis shy away from physical play, but it's certainly not the top of their, when you're looking at those two players' resume, physicality is not one of the first 2 lines on the resume.
No.
And I think Ristolainen could do that. And, on a night where you're playing a bruising sort of team, like a team like the Islanders, maybe you're trying to send a message and you play Ristolainen on that top pair because of his physicality.
Yeah. And what was the big thing, I think, with Matt Niskanen was that it permitted Ivan Provorov to freelance a little bit more, not play as safe, not have as much pressure on his shoulders. Maybe Ristolainen can offer that to Provorov in terms of, his physicality and being just that guy that's going to make the Flyers a nightmare to play against in their top pair.
Can I just add another Ryan Ellis point that I wanted to point out? I don't think I was on the podcast right after his first press conference, I'm not sure if I was, but Ryan.
You were on some beach in Hawaii somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, I was here. I remember watching it here because what a press conference it was. But I'll say this, and this is such a stupid aside, but because we haven't even met the guy in person, but his disinterest and overall just like indifference to kind of the media and the whole situation of it all in that press conference very much reminded me of like when we first met Matt Niskanen and we're like, let's get all these kind of personality questions out there. And he's just like, I really just want to play hockey and like do a good job. And like, it was very similar. And I was like, this could be great. This could be really great for Ivan Provorov if this is the same situation. But again, just a stupid aside, but I remember thinking like, this is oddly reminiscent of the first time that Matt Niskanen was like popped into a press conference with a bunch of us. And he was just like, I'm a hockey player and I'm just doing this because I'm obligated to. So,
and a week later, we had the polar opposite with Cam Atkinson wearing his wife's Gritty t-shirt.
Yeah.
It was incredibly similar to when they brought in Matt Niskanen and Kevin Hayes. And then the Ryan Ellis interview and the Cam Atkinson interview, it was like, oh wow, it's like deja vu all over again, except for there's like a foot of a difference, or like not a foot, like 6 inch difference between Cam and Kevin, because Kevin's a giant. So just dumb, but interesting.
No, that's actually a really good observation, Taryn. I like, to me, they remind me too in the same way that they were both shocked. Like, they both went from teams that they spent a long time with, they had won with. Obviously, Nashville had won a cup, but Ryan Ellis had been there for 10 years. He had just signed a 7-year deal. I think he's got 6 more years left on that deal, I believe, or maybe 5. I got to double check, but they were both shocked and then starting to kind of slowly but surely embrace, like, okay, new challenge, Flyers. So yeah, it is eerily similar to the Matt Niskanen situation.
I think Matt Niskanen, and for what it's worth, I think Matt Niskanen did love how much Philly loved hockey. Matt Niskanen hated the bubble. Matt Niskanen, when you would get to talk to him about fans, like I remember when we were first talking about fans maybe not being in the building, like right before the COVID shutdown happened, Matt was really like, it's going to be a massive loss if they're not here. Like, Philly people love hockey. They know hockey. They watch you shift by shift. They're on you if you don't, and that's something that these players appreciate, because the opposite of love is indifference. And I think he enjoyed how much Philly cared about hockey. That's a misconception when people talk about his retirement. Matt hated the bubble, from my understanding. A lot of us still haven't talked to him, but I have it on very good authority. That situation and that idea of potentially being separated from your kids in a hotel and doing all that again, I think was not really part of the bargain for someone who had already, hoisted the cup and had a pretty good career and doesn't really care about wealth and fame and any of that stuff. So I think Ellis will come to enjoy Philly, because a lot of people who've come here have. So it should be interesting.
Absolutely. Flyers Talk is brought to you by Great Railing. Stop into Great Railing for the highest quality and lowest prices on all your railing, decking, and fencing needs. All right, well, let's get into the second pair defense. Taryn Hatcher, who is it for you?
Well, guys, wouldn't you guess? Rasmus Ristolainen and Travis Sanheim. I think it's kind of assumed. I think all 3 D pairs are kind of assumed. I am excited to see what Ristolainen can do. I know both of you had him as your sleeper and I did not. That's mainly just because just the Buffalo of it all, honestly. Like, the devil I know better than the one that I don't. And I feel like Travis Sanheim does have upside. I more so would like to see Travis play alongside. It seems like Travis has been in that pair with Phil Myers, where at times it gets volatile. Like, one kind of has a defensive responsibility slip and it reverberates onto the other one. And the 2 of them were very good when they're very good, but it's almost like that, like, toxic relationship of the highs are highs, the lows are lows. And I think a lot of times the 2 of them, you thought this is either really going to work, or in this game, it's really not going to work. And so I would like to see Rasmus Ristolainen or maybe Travis for Rasmus Ristolainen become more of like the Niskanen Ellis steady stability of it all. That's what I would like to see. My sleeper here, and I'm going to go a little bit left. I think I'm going to go with Cam York. I would love to see Cam York get up and get some decent D pair time. I would like to see his athleticism alongside of like a Sanheim maybe at some point. I'm not sure what the situation would be that would be the case, honestly, because they've got 6 really strong defensemen kind of through all 3 D pairs. But I would like to see, it's another one of those things where it's not the Morgan Frost situation. I don't think he needs to be in certain places type of a deal. But I would just like to see, he's a young kid who's got a lot of energy, a lot of athleticism, a lot to his game. And I would like to see him alongside like a Sanheim who's got a ton of natural athleticism. I think it would be fun to see what they could do. But I'm also just trying to mix it up here. But I think Cam York would be my sleeper at the second D pair.
No, I love that. I hope Cam York is pushing to be the next man up. We know injuries happen in hockey. I hope he's pushing and ready to be that 7th guy maybe, where if an injury happens, they're excited to put Cam York in the line. That would be really fun. Joe Fordyce, how about you? Second D pair.
So Taryn, I'll say it's not as different as you think because Cam York is also my sleeper for the second line,
Okay,
or
good.
for the second D pair. And
I
the
was worried
reason
people were
is-
gonna think I was a nut job, so that makes me feel better.
I'll say my reason for this is, and I'll start with my sleeper, is because I don't feel like either Justin Braun or Keith Yandle are candidates to play higher in the lineup. So if York is going to come into the lineup, I don't think he's coming into the third pair. So because I mean, Braun and Yandle at this stage in their career, I just don't see Braun moving up unless it's completely necessary. And for Yandle, I don't know that there's enough defense there for him to move up. I think we would all agree that Yandel's being brought here, and the reasons are not for his play in his own end. He hasn't played for a team because of his play in his own end in a long time. So Cam York's going to be my sleeper, and my pair is the same as Taryn. That's going to be Sanheim and Ristolainen. And I'm going to make the same point about Sanheim that I've made several times on this podcast. It's time for the young player stuff to go out the window with him, and he has to put his stamp on that second pair. That has to be his pair, and that's where he belongs. And it's got to be this season. It really does. This is a huge year. He just got his arbitration deal. He has to prove it to this team that he's the second pair defenseman and kind of the guy that takes the reins on that second pair. And he's got a lot of experience in this league. So the idea that, he's a young player, he has time, he's going to get better, he's going to do this and he's going to do that. I think all that stuff has to go out the window. And when I say has to go out the window, I don't just mean a narrative amongst the fans and media. I think the team has to take that narrative and get it out of the window. Look at the defense. He is the longest tenured. I guess he and Provorov would be the longest tenured defenseman on the team. So the young player stuff's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And I think this is the year for him to make his mark on that second pair, take ownership of it, and and show the Flyers what he can do. And we need a lot more of the best of Sanheim and a lot less of the worst. And when I say worst, I mean, -6 at the Garden, or 2 seasons ago when it seemed like he fell down every time. Remember he went through that spell early in the season 2 years ago where it seemed like every time he had to a forward was, bearing down on him, he would end up wiping out. And, that kind of stuff needs to, once in a while it's going to happen to every player, no matter how good they are. But that stuff needs to be out of his game, and he needs to be the guy on the second pair.
Yeah, such a huge year for not only him personally, but obviously for him in his Flyers future too. Like, can he show the Flyers he is firmly a part of this future? Because his new deal is obviously only 2 years. He was on a bridge contract before that for 2 years. By the end of this 2-year contract, the Flyers will have a better read on him, and it'll be a big year for him because he's going to be up for a new deal in his 27-year-old stage. And either he's going to be with the Flyers and they're going to think he's a part of this future, or maybe they're ready to say, hey, we're going to give our younger kids a better chance here. So yeah, really big time for Travis Sanheim, without a doubt, to really show his game. And they brought in experience for him, a lot of experience to maybe put a little less on his plate and allow him to get more comfortable. So he's got to show and that the time is now for him to kind of carve out his role and make it who he is. I'm no different in my second pair, Travis Sanheim and Rasmus Ristolainen. I am different in my sleeper. I'm going to go Justin Braun because I do think Justin Braun can play higher in the lineup still. Heck, he was their top pair guy for a lot of last year. A lot of that was out of necessity, as we all know, but he was a top pair guy with Provorov. He might have been their most consistent guy in terms of actually playing defense and preventing goals. And he has played with Travis Sanheim in the past. So maybe Rasmus Ristolainen does not pan out, or maybe he starts slowly or has a rocky start to his Flyers career. Maybe they bump him down to the third pair and say, hey, play less, play next to Keith Yandle, an experienced offensive guy. And maybe they get Justin Braun back in a familiar spot with Travis Sanheim, a pair that's played together. They know each other. So I wouldn't rule that out. For me, I think Justin Braun could play second pair next to Travis Sanheim. He's my sleeper. Not a young kid, obviously an older sleeper, but I wouldn't rule that out. All right, so we'll shift gears to the third pair. It sounds like we're all going to have the same, but I think we'll have different sleepers, so that'll be fun. Taryn Hatcher, who is your third defensive pair?
Well, out of, just process of elimination, it becomes Justin Braun and Keith Yandel. I just think the Flyers probably want those top four to develop together too. So it just kind of makes sense to try to preserve keeping those two together as much as possible, because I'm sure Chuck Fletcher and Elaine Vigneault are looking toward the future as much as they are right now. And having, like Rasmus Ristolainen and Travis Sanheim develop together would be a better long-term play. And I'm sure they want Ryan Ellis and Ivan Provorov to become a comfortable top D pair together. My sleeper, and it's weird because he's still listed as a forward if you go on like Hockey Reference and stuff, is Sam Morin. I would love Sam Morin to make it. I would love Sam Morin to have an NHL career. Nobody works harder. No one deserves it more. You can see it in the Cam Atkinson video. He's at Flyers training facility working out. Like, the kid is just, it's so not overplayed when people talk about his attitude, his personality, how positive he's remained, how hard he works, how brutally honest he is about how difficult it's been on him. Like, he is genuinely one of these people who you meet and you pull for him, because as much as it's defined his career, it very much does not define his outlook on the potential of his future. He still is, incredibly optimistic and works for it. It's not like, this is a guy who's just trying to get by and get contracts and put money in the bank. Like, he really wants it. I don't even think he thinks of it like, I really don't want to be a bust. I think he really thinks of it as if, I want to do this. This makes me happy. And even through all the hardship, it makes me happy. And I want to do it. And I want to be with my teammates. And yeah, so I'm hoping Sam gets some time. I'm hoping Sam does well enough to secure a contract for his future. I hope he stays healthy. So probably a little bit of like a heart choice here on the sleeper for me. But if you're not pulling for him, I'm sorry, you're not on the right track when it comes to Sam Morin. The kid deserves everything that, he's worked for. So that's my sleeper. That's my third pair. That's what I got.
I may just follow up on Sam Morin. A couple things. There's a number of times where I feel like I've been in the practice facility and I see Sam Morin come off the ice and I have this reaction like, Morin's on the ice? I thought he just got hurt.
Yeah.
Like, the guy is constantly working, and just to be interested in working your way back from the injuries that he's come back from is a testament to the kind of person he is and the kind of athlete he is and the kind of determination he has. And the other thing I'll say is, he's played as a defenseman. He's been played as a forward. He's had his struggles, but you always notice something Sam does in every game he plays. And I'm not talking about I'm not making a joke. Like, you notice him really, like he made this error as a forward. I'm saying you notice him for a positive reason in every game that he plays in. He's out there. He's trying to make an impact. I recall a game last year. I believe it was the first game he played forward. He went and he took on, I believe it was Brendan Lemieux of the Rangers, and Lemieux got traded right after the game. It's one thing I remember. But he came out there and he tried to send a message. And I think Lemieux had laid into one of the Flyers earlier in the game, and Morin came to his defense. And, he's that kind of guy, a great teammate. And, if every team in the league had a little more Sam Morin, they'd be better off. It's like I said, all of this stuff is a testament to who that guy is. So, again, as Taryn said, if you're not pulling for him, there's something wrong with you, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't echo you guys more. And I don't think he gets enough credit for what he went through at the start of last season of transitioning to be a forward. He's working his butt off all season to be a winger. He gets some games at winger, and then suddenly he's needed on defense, and he actually gets in there and plays well, remembers how to play his old position, and
forces for his NHL goal.
Yeah, scores his
And
first
it's a game winner.
a game winner, Taryn. It was a 1-1 game against the Rangers, I believe.
I thought I was going to cry.
Yeah, that was a big game. The Flyers were still hanging on to hopes. I believe they had just gotten rocked the night before. I think it was an 8-3 loss. It was a big game, and it came through and, kept himself in the lineup at the position he should have been in. Kudos to the kid. That again, a testament to what he's been through and worked hard. So,
And like when you talk to some of these guys, and it was a little different last year because it was through Zoom and they never know when you're recording versus when you're not and whatever. But Sam's one of these people where when you have side conversations with him, like, hey, this is off the record, like just for context kind of a thing, which, a lot of us reporters do because we don't want to misrepresent stories, even if guys aren't comfortable going on the records about certain things. Sam's one of those people who, like, off the record is even more like positive and excited about stuff than he is on the record. So it's like, Sam, honestly, like, how do you feel about tackling this whole thing? And I didn't talk to Sam about it. I remember talking to one of the coaches about it, and I'm not going to say who, but I remember talking to one of the coaches about it and like, how do you really think? And he was just like, when I tell you, like, the kid doesn't complain. Like, it's just, I'm going to figure it out. This is going to be great. This is an opportunity. Like, I'm happy to have the opportunity, like, genuinely all the time. And that's not always how it goes. Sometimes it's like cameras down, red light turns off, and it's flips a switch and it's a different person. And I really pull for him, even though he's still, I don't know why that would be, but he is still listed as a forward on a lot of places. And I'm like, please change that because he needs to be playing.
He's strictly defenseman now. I think the Flyers have said that. Obviously, I think Samuel Morin admitted that to us. He's like, yeah, Chuck told me I am a defenseman. Yeah, they got to get that changed because he is not a winger anymore. And that's a good thing. So, Joe, who are you looking at for your third D pair? Is Sam Morin your sleeper?
So it's Yandel and Braun. Sam Morin is not my sleeper. There's a couple things I want to say about this third pair, and it kind of goes back to when I was talking about the forwards, and I thinking JVR as the third line, one of the third line wingers, but first power play.
Yeah.
Keith Yandel is, to me, even strength. He's a third pair defenseman, but I think he is a sleeper to be the number one defenseman on the power play.
Okay.
Because of his offensive skills.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a far fetch. Like, it might not even be a sleeper is what I'm saying, because he's there for one reason. That's the reason. It's to quarterback a power play.
Yeah.
And he's in his mid-30s. And I could see if the power play struggles, him being moved up there to jumpstart the power play. I don't see him playing any higher in the lineup and at even strength. So my third pair is that, with the caveat about Yandel playing potentially on the top power play. But I do think Yandel's the second power play quarterback. He has to be, or else why would you bring him here? So to me, that's my two things about Yandel: third pair, higher up on the power play, with the potential of being the top power play quarterback. And my sleeper is going to be Igor Zamula. Little cup of coffee last year. And I think if a player like him with limited experience, if he's going to break in, it's going to be on that third pair where there's not a lot of pressure on him. I feel like Cam York's game is more polished, and he'd easily slide into an upper pair, ideally second pair, as we talked about. Yeah. But Zamula, to me, needs to be put in a spot where he doesn't have a ton of pressure on him in terms of minutes. And I think that would be the third pair. And unfortunately, I feel like that only happens if there's injuries, but it seems like those are inevitable. And I feel like Zamula would be the sleeper candidate for that third pair. So that's what I would go with.
Yeah, the Keith Yandel on the top power play unit, I like that, Joe. I think it would be a good way to allocate minutes, too. You have to think Ryan Ellis and Provorov are going to be playing so many minutes. Keith Yandel, like you said, is a third pair guy that's not going to be really in there for his defense as much as his offense. Put him up on the top power play unit, or maybe if it's struggling, you get a guy that's been there, done that on power plays. A good way to spread and balance minutes. So I like that. Joe, I am mirroring your selections. I have Igor Zamula as my sleeper as well. And I also have Justin Braun, Keith Yandel. If they're a pair, it sounds like we all had the same thing. I think it would be really difficult to not have these pairs, or at least not have these 6. I mean, you have a guy like Keith Yandel. He's chasing an NHL record for consecutive games played. And he's, in many ways, kind of viewed as your 5th or 6th defenseman. Like, none of these guys are going to sit. I would be very surprised if none of these
a guy like Yandel's not going to come here if he's not going to continue that consecutive game streak. So he's obviously been given assurances that he's playing.
Yeah, so to get a Cam York or a Sam Morin or a Igor Zamula in the lineup, I think an injury would have to happen. And we wouldn't wish that upon anyone, but injuries do happen. So I think these kids will be waiting in the wings for sure. And yes, Igor Zamula is my sleeper. He actually played the most professional hockey games last year among the 3 in terms of Samuel Morin, Cam York, and obviously Zamula. So I would say Zamula is my sleeper. I think he's.
Did he really?
You know what? How did I double check? Let me see how many games Samuel Morin actually played. I forgot Samuel Morin actually got.
Sam played 3. Sam played. I don't know how many Sam played. I believe you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But when you said that, I was like, "Is that true? Could it be?"
You know what's funny?
But when you say professional, are you talking including like minor league games?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm actually not positive. You know what's funny? So I'm glad Taryn mentioned that, because if I forgot that Morin actually had a handful of games down in Lehigh. So in terms of pro games, Lehigh and Flyers both had 27. So Zamula had 27. So did Samuel Morin. He had 20 with the Flyers, 7 with Lehigh. Zamula, obviously, a cup of coffee, 2 with the Flyers, 25 on that. So actually the same number. Thank you, Taryn, for finding that.
I genuinely, I wasn't calling you out. I didn't know.
No.
I was kind of surprised. I was just like, wait, what?
Well, notice I'm starting to hesitate as I said that. I'm like, wait, like Morin did play pro games with Lehigh too. So I had to count that, and I did not. So same amount of experience in terms of pro hockey last year. But true sleeper would be Zamula, because I think he's a little bit forgotten sometimes with Cam York and Samuel Morin, obviously looking like they're waiting in the wings. And I think he's well-groomed. The organization has been really high on him. They obviously took him into the bubble during the 2020 playoffs because they were that high on him. And I think he would fit in well. I think when he got that cup of coffee, he blended in. He fit in well. He looked like he fit the pro bill, and does a lot of good things. Smart passer, very fluid, smooth guy. So he would be my sleeper. I wouldn't rule him out playing games this year at some point for the Flyers.
It should be, like, I don't even want to start thinking about this, but based on last year, I know at some point we're going to have to acknowledge it as the potential truth. Having this conversation where each of us have like 3 different sleepers, genuinely speaking, like it wasn't like we discussed this beforehand. We definitely did not. When you think about the way last year would impact the lineup COVID wise, like if there was ever any kind of small outbreak of anything, you sit here this year, when we talk about how many sleepers there are at so many different positions on the team, it makes you feel a little bit like, all right, this, knock on wood, given a really crappy situation, there's potential not to be completely depleted, which I think right now every team is wishing they had, because we saw, to so many teams across the NHL where it's just like, I think that the Devils at one point had like 19 guys impacted, so again, knock on wood, and you don't even really want to say it out loud and think about it, but at some point it is like a reality that we probably have to discuss. It makes you feel better about the number of sleepers the Flyers have, because you want to give guys like full opportunity to get healthy and feel good again, should a really crappy situation unfold. So, yeah.
No, it's
hard to bring it up, but it's necessary in these times.
The world we live in, where depth is even more important, because it's almost outside of like bumps and bruises that can come up and hurt your team. So you need depth, and I think it's exciting that, and I believe the Flyers probably internally really love their D picture now. It went from obviously looking estimated and very short on depth to it's revamped, and then you have 2 of your top prospects. Like Cam York is arguably the club's top prospect in the system. You could probably argue Morgan Frost is there. And then Igor Zamula is probably a top 3 prospect. And so those are two of your top 3 prospects, like waiting in the wings, like for opportunity. So that's pretty exciting. I think the fans should be excited about that too. That those are the 2 guys that are your depth guys, along with Samuel Moran, who's a fun player to see in the lineup because of his want to step up for people, physicality, all that fun stuff. So
yeah, and Jordan, but just to echo, like Taryn brought up early in the podcast, and I said as well, it feels like this whole defense core should be set almost in stone.
Yeah.
So anything to change would almost seem like a sleeper.
Yeah. Yeah, like these are true sleepers. I think the guys that we're picking move lineup to maybe get into the lineup, like they are true sleepers. It's not like the forward position where I think there's a little more open competition. I think we would all agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing too. But it's good that the Flyers have, I think, something set in stone. That's exciting because they just, like Justin Braun is a 3rd pair guy right now. He was a top pair guy for a good chunk of last season. Like that's kind of scary to think about. It's more comforting, I think, for Flyers fans that he is back down the line and maybe playing where he should be at his age and with his abilities.
Yeah, it's ideally, and I know I said this before too, as much as you want young guys to feel like there's a place they can break into and you want them to work for it, and I'm sure they will anyway, because every single player wants to be a part of the big club. Ideally, and they attributed it as one of their strengths in 2019, 2020. Ideally, you want to know night in, night out, these are the guys, they have this kind of chemistry. These 2 play this way together. These 2 play that way together, blah, blah, blah. Because otherwise you're constantly adjusting to individual players, and those individual players are constantly adjusting to each other. It's a recipe for disaster. And they should be able to do it. Ideally, when you talk about pros, they should be able to do everything and blah, 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 yada, yada. But the reality of the situation is it's a lot easier. And this comes from the coaching staff. This isn't me like sitting here talking just out of, my butt, but the coaching staff has said before, it helps even the forward groups defensively when they know this guy has this tendencies, and when he plays with this person, these 2 have these tendencies, and it helps those 2 people when they know each other's tendencies. And that was something they were really lacking last year, and I think it showed in a lot of ways. A lot of times they would get stretched out really easily. If people weren't where you thought they would be, there would be miscommunications quite a bit because you're constantly adjusting to a new person. So again, while you want the young guys to feel like there's something to work toward, you want to dangle a carrot in front of them. Ideally, this is, you want it locked in too. So
amen
good
to that.
situation for Flyers.
Yeah, really. And it's looking like they could have 3 new defensive pairs going into next season. I think that shows you how much they really revamped their defensive group. So a lot of competition, a lot of fun stuff to talk about. It was great talking about the forwards. It was really fun talking about the defense. We'll get into goalies next time too. Obviously, I think we know who is the 1 and 2, but we will certainly talk goalies. So we'll go through the whole lineup. But Taryn Hatcher and Joe Fordyce, thank you so much as always. A special thank you to Steve Graham, our do-it-all video producer, chipping in here with Flyers Talk. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. Wherever you get your podcast, please rate and listen, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.